Welcome back everyone to another Sonic Archie review. If you're unfamiliar with this relatively new series, basically I'm reading through the Sonic Archie comics for the first time and I am reviewing each independent issue right here on the channel. I took a look at issue 1 last time which I thought was a fun, charming introduction, and now here we are with issue 2. Unlike issue 1, this comic only has one two-parter and a bunch of tiny stories, but the main ones I'll be covering are of course Triple Trouble and Verta A Go Go. Let's not waste any more time and start the review. Now if you thought the title of Triple Trouble rang a bell, you might be thinking the Game Gear title Sonic Triple Trouble. Unfortunately, this isn't a cheeky reference since this issue was published in September of 1993, whereas Triple Trouble came out in November of 1994. This could have been some weird marketing strategy, but I don't think so guys. Still a cool coincidence. This issue starts in a similar fashion to, god what was that fucking title again? Meet Me at the Corner of Hedgehog and Vine, where we see Robotnik throwing darts at a Sonic dartboard. As he does so, Crabmeat is giving his boss some very generous emotional support, and is then subsequently bombed by Robotnik's new Batnik for literally no reason. This, combined with him being dismembered by a robot plant in the last issue, is making me start to feel a little bad for Crabmeat. He's just trying to be Robotnik's hype man, and yet he just keeps getting abused. Anyways, this new Batnik in question is Coconuts, who you may recognize from the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah, when reading the first issue, I thought the Archie series was simply taking inspiration from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, but now this honestly feels like more of an expansion of its universe. I mean, with the same depictions of Sonic and Tails, a very similar Robotnik and returning characters, this series so far has really emphasized just how widely successful Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog really was. Anyways, if you're unfamiliar with Coconuts, he's basically just a loyal, overconfident Batnik who uses exploding coconuts as weapons. So basically it's just those fucking monkeys in Emerald Hill but on crack. As you can imagine, Robotnik sends this demon out to hunt and destroy Sonic, and it's here where we cut to Sonic and Tails out for a run. Side note, I like how this universe is keeping the brother-like dynamic between Sonic and Tails. In the first issue, these two literally had no one-on-one interaction, and since this is the era of experimentation in Sonic narrative since the games left so much open-ended, you never know how these depictions of the characters are going to play out. So while it may seem like something little, the iconic dynamic between these two characters is shown here to be very much intact, which is always nice. Anyway, Coconut interrupts once he starts throwing bombs at these two, and you basically just get a bunch of fun panels of Sonic and Tails avoiding this overzealous Batnik and his bombs before Tails almost chases after him. Sonic stops him though, and in a very cool moment of Sonic actually using his head and coming up with a plan, they try out a different approach. I love scenes like these where the story actually reminds us why our protagonists are so reliable and good at their job, even if their personality and reckless decisions don't always reflect it. Coconuts continues his hunt when all of a sudden he's rattled out of a tree by Sonic. Coconuts immediately tries to bomb the toddler next to him and Tails not only catches the explosive but passes it to Sonic, who immediately passes it back. This starts a fun game of volleyball with Coconuts receiving the final pass before, well, you know. I love the following scene where a SWAT bot brings Robotnik Coconut's still functioning severed head. There's just something funny about the 90s era of cartoon violence. During this scene, however, we see two ominous silhouettes nearby who definitely don't look friendly, and that's where part 1 ends. Part 2 immediately opens up with these two silhouettes being revealed to be Scratch and Grounder. Two more characters from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog who, in my opinion, were the highlights of that show. I love these two. For anyone wondering, Scratch and Grounder basically started the trend of Robotnik having two goofy robot henchmen, but in my opinion, they are easily the best. Whereas Orbot and Cubot are incompetent, overworked employees who hate their boss, and Doko and Boko are more of a reluctant but loyal family, Scratch and Grounder are two ultra-serious, try-hard henchmen who also happen to be extremely dim-witted and terrible at their job. I especially love how the comic handles this by hyping these two up as ominous threats, only to reveal pretty much immediately that they're idiots when Robotnik calls them to test out the communication, and Scratch misinterprets this as some random stranger calling them in the middle of a mission. Bringing these two lovable goofballs into the world of Archie was a great decision, and this issue shows with charming bits like Scratch using a book titled How to Catch a Hedgehog to Catch Sonic. While this is going on, Sonic and Tails watch these two from afar, and the author practically just leaves it up to the reader to choose a reason to cut Tails from the story to allow for a 2-on-1. Back then, they just didn't care, man. And while this might have been lame by today's standards, considering the target demographic and era this was made, fuck it man, I'm having fun. Anyway, it turns out that the two robot henchmen were following a false trail leading to the edge of a cliff, and now right where he wants them, Sonic makes them fall off. Now having the upper hand, Sonic taunts the robots, but Grounder ain't playing no games, and he quickly shoots a cable out of his arm that wraps around Sonic's neck, and the pair bring the hedgehog tumbling down. So now, this is it. Despite their clumsiness, Scratch and Grounder have Sonic the Hedgehog at their mercy. They won. It's what I would be saying if they didn't immediately start arguing over who really captured Sonic, leading to an all-out brawl as Sonic unties himself free. I adore the pure look of confusion on Sonic's face here. He's just like, really? Is this really happening? Without a second to lose, he traps the duo with an improvised cave-in, taunts Robotnik over the phone, and dips, closing out Triple Trouble. Yeah, I love this one, guys. Coconuts is fine. I'm glad we got more of Sonic and Tails being best friends, but what really makes this whole issue for me is Scratch and Grounder's introduction. They're too iconic not to make everything they touch turn to gold, and their shenanigans were a blast here. Really, this whole story was one episode of Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, but screw it, it's my favorite so far. The next major part of this issue, Vertigo A Go-Go, is definitely an interesting one to say the least. Immediately, we start out with the comics confirming that the rings from the game are an in-universe thing, which I find pretty interesting. Stuff like the Sonic movie, the recently released Sonic Prime, and even Sonic X to some extent have all canonized the rings, with the comics being no exception, and I always thought it was funny since as far as we know, the rings do not exist within the main canon of the games, or at least in the form we see them, so it's kind of cool seeing how each adaptation adapts them, with the Sonic movies definitely being the most unique to me personally. Enough of the side tangent, Sonic stops before several magic floating rings before he catapults into them due to a hidden spring. He then finds himself in a very trippy, maze-like area where he meets two odd strangers, Cal as in vertical and Al as in horizontal, with their names coinciding with their placements in the panel. I'll give the story this, it's definitely visually interesting. However, it's completely out of place, no pun intended, because literally nothing is explained here. We don't know who Cal or Al are, and the most we get to an explanation is the fact that Sonic collected too many rings. This makes me think this is Archie's take on a special stage, and if it is, that's honestly pretty cool, but I'm not sure. Also, if Al and Cal was a pre-existing thing from the 90s and this is meant to be some weird crossover, let me know, cause this shit was weird. Anyways, literally nothing happens from the story, and Sonic is sent out of the portal where Anton is, searching for him. After he lets out a batch of words by asking what's up, Sonic chases him and the story ends. I honestly hope we do get a story soon where Anton is a major character because I want to know more about these two's dynamic and why they hate each other. I already know Princess Sally will become a major character down the line, but the last issue was my first time learning of Anton and Boomer's existence, so I'm definitely really curious about them as well. Yeah, Vertigo A Go-Go is clearly meant to be a fun filler story to add more meat to the overall issue, and I mean, what do you want me to say? I don't know what I just read. That was issue 2, and even with the last story, Triple Trouble more than makes up for it by just being a blast, man. I honestly don't know what other elements are left to carry over from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog since everything from that show is here, but if they find more, I welcome it. It was a fun show and to find a lot of Sonic's character back in the day. Overall, I had a nice time, and I can only hang to my seat for whatever craziness issue 3 is going to throw my way once I cover it. Until then, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, then please like, subscribe, and as always, I will see you guys next time. Peace out.